Welcome, and thank you for pressing play. I'm Crystal Bergfield, and this is Back to School with Crystal Bergfield. Throughout history, great teachers have stepped forward to help show us the way to coexist in society. They have urged us to consider our role in community. Just like those teachers, I am offering up my knowledge and experience to contribute to a just, responsible, and innovative United States. Through storytelling, interviews, and in-depth discussions, I will dive into the issues that plague our society and highlight new ideas that could contribute to a healthy nation. This podcast is part of a larger curriculum to educate Americans about our society. Find your seat, take a breath, and prepare to expand your mind, your heart, and your reality. All right, friends, welcome. Today I am out of studio. Actually, I'm at the Healing Studio in Broomfield, Colorado. I'm joined with the owner and operator, Leanne Holitza. Since we have been discussing jobs and wages all month, I wanted to highlight a story of the life of small business. Leanne, welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into it. Let's hear a little bit of your story, Leanne. Could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, so I own the Healing Studio in Broomfield. I also operate a business called Insightful Inspirations out of the Healing Studio. The Healing Studio is designed to be a place for a bunch of different types of healers and people coming together to be able to have a place where everybody can be doing similar like-minded work, kind of in the safety of a like-minded space. And then the Insightful Inspirations is where I do my own energy healing business, and I've been doing that for a while, and actually because of that, that's why I needed the Healing Studio, because I had been renting out in the world, but found it was much better to have a bunch of healers together rather than be out there doing it by ourselves, kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Safety in numbers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I came from the corporate world. I have a master's degree in business and thought I was going to be a corporate citizen. That was what was plugged to me as a kid was, hey, there's, go work for a good company and they'll take care of you and things will, work out and you retire and have a happy little life with your pension. Mm-hmm. And I worked for IBM. They bought a company that I was working for and got laid off, and then was doing the healing work on the side sometimes and just decided to try to do it, but then, struggled with the idea of making a living wage and where I was at with IBM. So I went back to IBM. They hire and lay off quite a bit. And so I went back and then was there for a year and got laid off again. So the second time I got laid off, I told my husband I told him I couldn't do it anymore, that I really needed to go try and make a go of it on my own and try to figure out what that meant. So it wasn't easy, but here I am.
Here you are. How did you get here?
I was doing, I had figured out that I had a skill, energy healing skill, and I was doing readings at a metaphysical shop in the evenings just for fun. And then I promptly became like the most popular one in the place, and so there was lots of demand. And so I was kind of trying to juggle what that meant. And then when the layoff happened, that was when it was kind of like, okay, really time to step out and try and make this work. And then I worked out of my house for a while, and I just started getting so busy and that I couldn't make my family be quiet the whole time. So, so I did get an office space, and then after a year of being in an office space, I ended up here with the Healing Studio. So I wasn't like one day like, oh, I'm going to be a small business owner. It kind of gradually became more and more and more, and I had to kind of uncover the struggles and the dramas of being a small business owner because I was, honest to goodness, I thought corporate was where I was going to go, and really, like I said, it was sold to me and my husband as like the promised land, right? Go get your degree and get in the corporate world.
For sure. And it's what we've done for so long, right?
Yeah,
that most families have taught that, especially if you have a master's degree. Right?
Yeah.
That's where you're at.
I know. And, the layoff part, I will say, it's very traumatic and difficult to go through. So, and having to, watch your peers get laid off and things like that. So I am grateful in the sense that I'm away from that stress, because small business, at least so far, I haven't had to face that part of it on my end. So.
Well, and what I really love about the Healing Studio is that you're creating opportunities for other healers and modalities. And so you've created a space where other entrepreneurs can come and have their business as well. Is that right?
For sure. Yeah. And that was part of my impulse was, okay, this was pretty challenging for me, and I have lots of resources and lots of skills, and, not all healers come from a business background. I mean, and we don't necessarily want them to be, right? Because they're healers. So I did want to create a space for an opportunity where they could, have a legitimate business space without having to know everything about the ins and outs of a building and that kind of stuff,
Yeah. Could you share some of the struggles that you had in opening the studio? As an entrepreneur, everyone has a different experience.
Yeah.
But did you have some things that you're like, oh God, am I going to get past this? Or
so one of I would say even before the studio, the self-employment tax, it was just blew me away as far as I'm being punished to be self-employed. I'm taking care of myself. I'm no longer going to the corporate well, and I'm taking responsibility for myself and bringing myself off of unemployment and all those things. And now I'm have to pay this self-employment tax.
Can you tell us about that?
It's basically a tax that you get for being self-employed, which to me is ironic. I just don't really totally understand the logic behind it, but I'm sure that there was some.
For somebody.
Yeah, right. So I ended up, because it just made more tax sense, and, it becoming an S Corp, which that was very challenging to try to figure out, and all the things I had to do. And now I literally have to pay a salary company to pay myself. So these were things that I was a little bit shocked about. I could run off the grid and, not pay taxes, which of course I would never do.
Of course.
But there's more incentive to do that, because it's so difficult to actually follow all the rules and keep up with regulations. And so, I have to pay professionals to help me keep following the laws and stuff, which I guess I'm employing other professionals, but it feels like a lot of that is fear-based, meaning I want to make sure I don't get in trouble.
Right.
While I'm trying to just help the community, you know. And so that was hard. And then also I was it was harder than I would have ever thought to get a sales tax license too, or just to know the ins and outs of it. I mean, I'm pretty math-minded and business-minded, and there's just a lot of, I was feeling overwhelmed at first, especially kind of thinking, how does anybody start a business? How does anybody get into a position where they can be successful at the start? Because it takes so much to start.
Yeah. Well, and from reading a lot of statistics on self-employed folks and small businesses, that's one of the major hiccups, is that it takes a lot to be able to invest in yourself up front. Even if you have the cure to cancer.
I know.
That costs money to be able to put that out there to people. And especially if you're battling other systems in place that are already profiting in some way. And I think that's one of the struggles for a lot of small business owners, and in those statistics showing that when you've got $1 million, it's easy to start a small business. But if you are a working person and you just want to do good in the community, there are so many of those things that you come up against.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot more local successes that could happen if there was more support from the beginning of that. And I've sometimes seen classes here or there about stuff. I attended a sales tax class in Louisville when I was working in Louisville, which I appreciated because they offered it, and then I could follow the rules.
Yes.
More of that would be good, even, just more education and things like that for people to know even where to start, or to feel like they can,
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of other self-doubt things going through anyway. So
totally,
on top of that,
course.
I gotta
especially if you're going to be an energy healer, that's not a normal thing to decide to do.
Yeah, just to open up your own studio.
Yeah, just to go do that. Yeah, it's not like a typical path, So.
So do you feel supported by the local economy to have a storefront business, or how do you feel about that?
Well, okay, so interesting. Broomfield does have a grant program for older buildings that I took advantage of.
Nice.
Where it's external based only, but it pays for anything from windows to roofs and landscaping to upgrade. So it's a 50-50 grant, and it's great because some of the old buildings that just need a facelift, and maybe you couldn't afford to do it as a business owner unless you had some help from the city. So it's a forgivable loan is what it was, and it was hugely helpful with the Broomfield side of things. Yeah. Other than that, though, I wouldn't say I was supported or not supported, except for the fact that I definitely watch, the incentives being given to big corporations to come into our towns, and watch people go out of business, and watch structures be empty because of that. And that seems like a waste and kind of sad. And I don't necessarily see the value in that. Like we've talked about the money going kind of out, dispersing, the taxes and things like that go far, or they don't, and it doesn't come back in to our town. So that's kind of unfortunate. But
does the cost of energy, does the cost of rent, and then all of the other expenses as a small business, does that affect how your outlook or your ability to succeed?
Yeah, for sure. I own the Healing Studio, so I pay a mortgage on it, and that is an investment, I suppose, as far as what I'm thinking in my head. But, I do have people coming in who are just trying to get going and are kind of nervous about signing like a year lease. And so I try to be flexible, but I know most places aren't. That's part of what when I was out looking for my own spaces before I decided to buy the Healing Studio, 5, 6, 7 years leases with personal guarantees, which means you're putting your family and your home on the line. Yeah. And that's pretty intense. And, the landlords don't care. And in fact, I have a friend whose mother owned a business, and she passed away of cancer, and the landlord will not let the business out of the lease. Yeah.
Wow.
I know. And and they really don't, he really doesn't care how that impacts this
He's got to pay
person.
his bills.
Yes. So I think there's definitely, I guess, where the power lies is uneven, and I try really hard, at least with the Healing Studio, to try and not use my authority at the, in balance, of course, so I don't get taken advantage of.
Well, and that's the thing, right? And most small business owners, you all are wanting to contribute to the community. Totally. You're wanting to help people, and yet you're held to these standards where you have to sometimes make sacrifices to charge more or to, have those extended leases. So I'm sure it's so difficult to be.
And people don't really understand like that, how much it really, like, if you pay for something, there's so much, infrastructure costs and things like that. I think sometimes people do go to small businesses and go, hey, I can get this on Amazon for $10. Why are you charging $22? I pay $10 to get it to this location. And now, I have.
Absolutely.
So anyways, whatever it is, as far as the markup goes, it's not typically because we're greedy. It's because we're really just trying to stay open. Right?
Totally.
And I on that front too, I do have an employee that's just part-time, and I would love to even be able to pay her more than I do, but because of all these other costs, I want it to be, an opportunity for all of us. And it would be great if there was some help in that front as far as...
I know, right?
Yeah.
If you're listening, universe.
If you're listening, universe.
So I love that you're able to employ somebody and contribute to another family. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it's about. Mm-hmm. It sounds like for you. Staying on that positive note, as a business owner, can you share any of the positive feelings that have come from establishing your own business? And
well, obviously there's a sense of pride, right, of accomplishment, and it really it is empowering, because at least for me personally, this is just my experience, so that working in the corporate world, I felt disempowered sometimes to have to do it a certain way, or be running around for a certain goal that I may or may not agree with, and so I feel like I can. And actually, I used to work with international teams, and so the interesting thing is we used to make these goals for these international teams, and the international teams would be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you don't live in this country, you don't understand. This is not reasonable." And I think the same thing goes for like even town to town and state to state. Like, I don't think you can just always be like this blanket like rules and regulations and it applies to all of us, because there's so much nuances and little things going on. So the thing I like about being a small business owner in that way is that I'm meeting the demands of my community. I'm not being asked to do things that may or may not be in alignment with what my community needs, if that makes sense. And my community responds. It either comes to my stuff and says, "Yay, thanks for doing it," or it doesn't, and then I make adjustments. I guess it's that micro level of being able to really have the pulse on here in my community versus trying to focus all over the world and do all these things that may or may not be relevant.
I like that. So what excites you? What keeps you invested in this space?
Mostly watching people be empowered and watching people's lives change. I would say that even about the people who work out of the healing studio too. I mean, I definitely see healers come in and flourish or whatever, or feel safer than they've ever felt, to have something that they want to do. Also, my kids probably keep me motivated too. I mean, I don't know if they always appreciate that I'm super busy. I was pretty busy in corporate too, so but they definitely sometimes comment about the home life imbalance. But but I do want them to see what it's like to really just dig into something you love and do what your heart says to do, not just what you're told to do.
Yeah, that's a great example for your kids to have. Thank you for that. I as you were speaking, it just made me think, people need to hear this, that small business owners, you just want to help people. Yeah. And you like to empower people. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, and most of the small business owners that I know, that's all that they are doing, is that they have a love, a passion that they want to bring to their community. And, it could be yoga, it could be a healing technique, like a stretch technique, or, whatever it is. It's something that comes from the fire within. You don't generally start a business from the angle that we started, just because you want to make some money. You do it because you really believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the really great thing that I think finally we're getting to the space of appreciating these modalities more and more. But from my perspective, I think all of us are born with some type of gift to use our inner abilities.
I agree.
So I love seeing more and more business owners who are doing that.
Yeah. Well, and if that was an honored value of our society more so, then we would be able to put structures in place around it,
Yeah. If we valued mental health or physical health or
mindfulness, yes. And for I have children, and I know what it's like to not have them conform, but also a little non-conformity is good, a little bit of space to be unique and figure that out.
Yeah, I call it curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity is good. Curiosity is good.
Wondering about yourself and the world,
and space to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is expansion part of your plan? Are you trying to expand any further?
That's a good question. And it's one I go back and forth with all the time, because some days I feel very strapped. But then when I get to expand, with an employee, which was an expansion, obviously, I could see potential for expansion, because I can see, okay, that person's able to take more of the load, so then I don't have to do it all. And then technically I would love to have, several people employed doing what they want to do the way they want to do it with me. Yeah.
And so in thinking about the expansion and still being right where you are, how do you find that balance of being here, running what it is, but also pursuing something and dreaming about something?
Yeah, that's a good question. Balance.
What?
As my eyes glaze over. It's hard because I have an expansive spirit. Anything I do 110%. And so I'm always looking for ways to learn more, do more, understand more, and so I do fit it in kind of as a regular thing. I try to make, even if it's just exploration, it's just learning, not necessarily putting something out there from the business yet,
Yeah.
It's a journey of balance for sure. And I don't work 9 to 5 hours either. So, try to make time available for people when they're not at work to come in and things like that. So, yeah.
So knowing that it's a lot.
Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself along the way?
For the good or the bad. I mean, I've definitely learned I'm resilient and learned that I can do what I put my mind to. But I've also learned that I have more support if I let it happen. Friends and family will show up in ways that, even unexpected ways that you just didn't know people were willing to help in that way for your vision,
That's beautiful.
Yeah. But I can also be edgy, when I get grumpy and stressed out.
That's learning too.
Which is kind of, counter to my healer self. But, I definitely have that side that gets kind of overwhelmed. I've learned that self-care is a sacred responsibility. Yes. And so I have to make sure I balance that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight or tips for the audience? And these tips could be for budding entrepreneurs or maybe for patrons whom you need to survive in this economy.
So entrepreneurs, I would say, if it's for me, I do this even with my one-on-one energy healing sessions, I see people who have that, as you mentioned, a unique gift that's just wants to come out, and that if they really tended to it or nurtured it, it could really serve them and all of us. And I see people burning out too quickly because they're trying to fit their gifts into systems that aren't ready for it. Whereas, if you could bring it out of that system and just offer it, by itself, people have more access to it. So, for entrepreneurs, it's worth it, and, give yourself a chance and time, and don't put too much pressure or expectations on yourself right up front, because everything takes time to blossom. It's like planting that garden and expecting the seedlings to have, fruit the next day. It doesn't work that way.
What is the value of those people who come here? How do they support you?
Oh, they definitely support me. I mean, they're coming in here and having, obviously keeping the healing studio going by, but they bring their positive vibes too. I mean, just them coming in and going, oh, I love this place, or it's so cozy here. It's even that is adding value, and, a place, I really want a place where people can feel safe to be a community and talk about things that maybe they can't talk about in other places. So that's one of the things that people in our community do, is they hold space for each other, which is really, really awesome. And, on the Pumping Shop Local, I think that we inform each other of those needs as well when we get together. When we're isolated and we're living in our own little lands and we're darn this, rah, 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 then we may not know that our neighbor right across the street actually has a solution for us,
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so we're, kind of blaming or victimizing ourselves from this big system, and literally oh, you can help me with that.
Yes.
So looking locally for resources and kind of seeing what's around, I think, even if it's not a money exchange, even if it's just incentives of things that are non-monetary, social connection's a big thing for most of us. And if you can't identify with the people around you, it's pretty isolating. So coming together and seeing the value of just being together.
Yeah.
And being able to say to each other, what's this? How does that work? Has anybody ever tried to do that?
Right? Imagine being able to do that.
Yeah.
That's the thing with today. There's so much, we're just online all the time.
Yeah.
And we Google everything and we try to find the answers on our own.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's so much easier if we just walk out our door and meet our neighbor.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know of a person who she's just claims she was born in the wrong time period because she's loves to be a 1950s housewife is what she says, which is just not in a derogatory way of like she just likes to cook, clean, sew, be at home, and because of where we are with a lot of pressures, she doesn't feel like she can do that, and she would just love to be able to like be rewarded somehow. I strongly encouraged her to figure out how she can offer that, because I personally can't sew things, and and there's sometimes times I need something sewn, or cooking or baking a cute cake.
Yeah.
These are things we value in our lives, but we forget. We go to a big grocery store and buy a cake and write a name on it, and that's it, right? But maybe your neighbor makes a really good cake.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to share?
I guess I feel like we need support you kind of had said at some point in this interview, the positive spin on it. I think we need support to see things in a positive light. I don't think that we're, there's so many issues and struggles and things to overcome that sometimes it does feel like overwhelming to step out and open your own business, for example, because you just got to get by. And the getting by part is, draining to all of us because it doesn't fill your tank really. Yeah. And so I guess that would be the thing I would say is if we could all just focus on, a little more of the what's working and what do we want instead of what's not working, what don't we want, that's... And I guess that's the law of attraction, right? You got to work with the whole, which is, yes, whatever you vibe into is what you're receiving. And so we need some vibes up.
Yes. How do we do that with all of the propaganda and all of the divisiveness?
I know.
Yeah. That's actually why I reached out, because this is working. Like, you are adding value to the community and being that safe space for people and welcoming people in. And not just that, but you're like diving them into their own inner healing, which we need more of today.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Well, and I will say it's very needed for people to be more authentic with each other and, vulnerable. Those are things that we don't always love, but I think it's necessary at this point.
Often we get in that space of we can get blamed or we can get attacked if we say the wrong thing, and there's really there's less forgiveness for one another sometimes. Yeah. But it's a beautiful thing when we allow ourselves to grow, when we allow others to grow. Yeah. Because even if we go through those growing pains, which happen, then we come out on the other side and we've birthed something, or we've grown in some way. Yeah, and I am optimistic. Thank you, Leanne, for joining me. Yeah. And thank you, audience, for joining me today and taking time to hear one story of the millions of small business owners around our country. As I've emphasized, small business is vital for the survival of community. Our patronage keeps small businesses alive. And small business is innovating for us, helping address our needs in real ways. Your homework for the week is to go and shop local. And I don't mean your chain grocery store. Seek out a new small business or an old one where everyone knows your name and spend money there. You will feel good and the business values your support. Thank you and be well.
This has been Fireside Chats with Crystal. Thank you for taking your precious time to invest in yourself, your community, and our country. Now go out there and shine, baby, shine. Our country needs us now more than ever. If you like what you heard, please check out the curriculum link and dive into more learning already live. Then head over to my website and donate to the cause. I'm offering my curriculum for free, so it's up to you to see the value in what I'm doing and support your girl along the way.